And in most 99.9% of instances with soloists and small business owners and freelancers, the risk is not money, the risk is ego. It's the ego of, oh my God, I'm promoting something and I'm trying to sell it and nobody's buying it and everybody's judging me. And oh my God, what a stupid idea. I can't believe I ever thought about it. And all those assholes from high school are laughing about me right now, even though they're not. People pay me good money. They pay me great money in order to argue for their limitations, in order to argue with me about why they couldn't or they shouldn't, charge more or boot that client that's, treating them poorly or, all kinds of different things. They pay me excellent money in order to stay exactly where they are.
This conversation with Brook McCarthy hit a nerve for me because it goes straight into one of the hardest parts of building a service business, asking people to pay for what you know. I speak with Brook, the founder of Hustle and Heart, about building trust before the sale. We talk about reputation, pricing, visibility, generosity, recurring revenue, and what it really takes to build a business around your expertise. This conversation felt very relevant for me personally because I'm also learning how to value my time, ask for money, and turn ideas into offers without making the whole thing feel forced or fake. Brooke brings a very direct but very human perspective to this. She talks about why so many experts, coaches, consultants, and service providers struggle to charge properly, why people often prefer to be liked rather than paid, and why the first sale matters so much when you're building confidence and momentum. We also explore paid live experiments, communicating value, building professional reputation, and how to create trust without relying on endless sales calls. This is a conversation for anyone who knows they have value to offer, but is still working through the discomfort of being visible, pricing their work, and asking people to pay. I hope you get a lot out of this conversation. So please let's dive in to this conversation with Brook McCarthy. Okay, so welcome back to Vantage Point Conversations. If you've been here before, you know the format. If you haven't, basically I get to have loads of interesting guests on these conversations where I get to ask them questions about things maybe I know something about or nothing about. Today, my guest is Brook McCarthy. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And Brook, my opening monologue is always the same. People could skip past my monotone voice at the beginning, but I don't introduce my guests. I don't think it's the me being lazy. I don't think I would do the best job, and I don't necessarily want to read out a massive bio. I know other people prefer to do that. I'd much rather you just introduce yourself, give people highlights, lowlights, anything in between, any context you think would be useful for people to know about you, and then we just dive into the conversation from there.
Sounds great. Well, it's a little bit about how are you? People ask, how are you? And I always think, oh God, and I have a bit of an existential crisis. How am I? I am a veteran business coach, which means I've been business coaching for 14 years. I've been self-employed for 18. I've been self-employed for longer than I've ever been employed now because I started pretty young. It's aged me terribly. And I've got about 20 odd years experience in communications in digital marketing. Before I started my business, I was a PR consultant. So I worked in public relations. And yeah, that was when I first got into the internet. Right from day dot, I loved it. I loved the instantaneous nature of it. And I always had a bit of a long-standing dream that I would be a journalist. But then I discovered the internet and I'm like, all I need to do is just publish my writing and press send on a mass email and Bob's your uncle, people read it. So, I've been blogging for business for about, I think this is my 15th or 16th year.
Amazing. It's There's so much in there. I mean, this conversation is quite sort of selfishly based because I've been into business, so I've sat outside of it, looked in awe and admiration for a long time. I've tried to get things off the ground, and the side hustle thing is something probably everyone has heard before. Um,
Yeah,
but I think there's so much into it, and there's a lot of people out there will help you with these things. Oftentimes it's um, maybe a bit too overwhelming, especially when you've gone from an employee
mm,
to starting your own business, whether that's full time or on the side. So there's
yeah,
so much into it. Um, and so I want to kind of dig into all of those places. But
yeah.
just to go back on your story, what was the trigger? Did you go all in at first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. I didn't have a plan, I didn't have a safety net. The last job I ever had was probably the worst job I ever had, and, I had been managed out of that job, so I was, what's it called? Performance review? Like, way to make people feel absolutely shockingly shit about themselves is to performance manage them. And it was really, devastating for my self-esteem. And I finished up, and this was supposed to be the decision that kind of brought me out of my quarter life crisis, where I had been boring friends and family for about 2.5 long, dull years. And so I'd taken a sideways step from public relations into magazine publishing. I'd taken a pay cut to do so. I had like a lot of hopes and expectations that this was going to be the beginning of, the next career trajectory. And it was a case of really trying and failing to get along with the boss. And it was a small business. I've never worked in corporate. I've never worked in massive businesses. I've only ever worked in small business. And, if anyone is listening to this knows that the difference is in small business, you've got to be flexible, you've got to be agile, you've got to get on with people. Like, it's really important in, especially when it's a small team. So yeah, so I was unemployed, and, I was thinking out loud to my partner and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what should I do? She thought I should start my own business. She actually said that to me before she hired me. She said, I'd like to hire you, but I think you're going to, take what you learn here and then go off and start your own business. That should have been a red flag. That should have been a like ding, 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 ding. This person is very threatened. There's something amiss here. But on that first unemployed, weekend, I was like, She thought I was going to start my own business. What a weird thing to say. Like, what a strange thing that she expressed. And so, even though, she was easily the worst boss I ever had, I'm kind of grateful because she gave me, she didn't give me the idea, but I thought, like, I'm going to start my business at some point in the future when I have more experience and I know what I'm doing. I was only 29. I thought I was way too young. Um, but I started my business in the space of a week. I just did like, I spent about $350. I got a very cheap logo from a friend, registered the business name. I registered, the tax things that you need to register in Australia, and I was off to the races. And I didn't have any savings, to speak of. I had rent to pay. I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a plan, and I really needed to make it work. And so I did. And within 4 months, I'd replaced my old salary, my old PR salary, and it was the best thing that I ever did. Like, it was one of the boldest things that I ever did. And I think because the fact I didn't overthink it and because I had that financial imperative, I made it work. And when I coach people nowadays, if people don't have a financial imperative, if they have a safety net, they've got, big savings, or they've got some kind of, I don't know, some kind of safety net, it's really tricky to coach them. It's actually a lot easier to coach and motivate people who really need to make some money, like who need to make it work. Give me that scrappy person who has $2 in the bank any day of the week. over the person who's got investor money or backup money or some kind of plan B, because they're tricky. They're harder, a lot harder to coach.
Yeah. I was just thinking, in preparation for this conversation, I was thinking about the overthinker, which is basically myself. And when you just said that, it it really sort of shines a light on, not the motivation, because it's great to have a safety net. The people out there will always say, but that's basically your plan B, right? And there's no urgency behind stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, to combat that overthinking, when you're pushed against money, you don't allow yourself the luxury of overthinking. You just have to do, right?
Yes, the luxury. I love that you said that. So, something that I repeat to my clients is that you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought if you're self employed. And I am pretty good at an existential crisis. I have a Bachelor of Religious Studies. I'm great at overthinking things. I can totally go into that rumination. But when it comes to business and when it comes to pitching and it comes to sales and it comes to marketing, I don't overthink it because I know that that's a luxury to do. It's my snobbery, my inhibitions, my psychology is a liability. It can be a liability if I let it take control. So I think the thing that we often mistake when we're on the outside looking in and we see people doing something that we perceive as brave or bold is that we think they don't feel fear, or they don't feel self-consciousness, or they don't feel that they don't overthink things, but that's not true. The difference is that they've outrun their fears and they put, their self-consciousness in the back seat, and they're not letting it drive the vehicle. It's not always easy to train your brain, but it's very, very necessary when it comes to building a business.
Yeah. It's I've said this for a while now. Awareness is like a superpower because we're not always aware of what's running the show.
Mm,
Um, and I've been through therapy before, and it started me on this journey of sort of self-discovery, not in a victimhood type of way. I think I went through a stage of blaming my life and my circumstances, which in hindsight is just ridiculous. But I think that's part of the
yeah,
journey.
yeah,
But what it actually allowed me to do was look at myself with compassion, without judgment, just see what's going on. And most of the time, it's an old historic story that's replaying.
yeah,
And one of the biggest things I feel is this critic or this voice in our heads. And sometimes we're aware it's there, sometimes we're not. Sometimes it's angry, sometimes it's a whisper. There's a whole load of things. But in order to change things, I think we really need to have to look at ourselves and sort of understand what's going on. That doesn't need to be a lifelong journey, but just start there and say, right, okay, I'm going to do something. What's showing up for me? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it blah, blah, whatever it
yeah,
can be? And I think it's all unique to everybody. Sometimes those stories were written a long time ago in childhood or something like
totally.
that, and we've carried
Yeah,
it with us. And it was there sometimes to protect us, etc. But
sure.
we have to let go of that in some way or another. And I think we spend a lot of time going back to those old scripts, and that in itself, that process
Mm,
can feel quite useful, but
mm,
ultimately, the big jump is when you just let it go. And I've come to
yeah,
this realization recently: you can let it go. It's a lot easier, but we kind of hold on to it as our story, as our thing, as
yeah,
our identity,
yeah,
and almost to prove that things can't work in the future.
yeah,
If you can work with it, can let it go, or just bring it on the journey, but not let it rule your ability to take the next step, whether that's a bit of a big leap or just a small step. So,
yeah.
does that any of that resonate with
Yeah,
yourself or
oh,
the people you work with?
100%. I'm not the first person that said this, but self-employment is the most accelerated form of self-development that's out there. And, believe me, I tried a few things. The only thing I've ever been president of was the Sydney University Meditation Society circa 1998. So along with the religious studies degree, I got into yoga, I got into meditation, I accidentally joined a cult. I read the self-development books. I very quickly decided self-development was just like masochism or sadism rather. Like, self-development is like, oh, how many ways can I hate myself? Um, but it's really not until you are doing business, and business is a verb. We do business. We don't have business. We do business. Um, that all this shit comes to the fore, and it's unavoidable. Like, you cannot help but see your money baggage, your visibility blocks, your inadequacy, your fear of, pissing people off, your people pleasing tendencies, like all of that becomes really obvious really quickly. And so then you've got a choice, right? And so you can choose to keep you exactly where you are, feeling shit, earning $2.50, or you can decide, all right, like, I'm going to do something about this. And every single day in business is another opportunity to do something about it. So, right now, for example, I'm right in the midst of running something called Life's a Pitch. And it is a challenge to get people pitching, to get business owners reaching out from behind the screen and actually making contact one to one with a variety of people for a variety of purposes. I haven't like, I've run this 10 times over 5 years, and I keep refining it, and I keep trying to make it better and better and better. I can't make it any easier, Colin. Like, short of coming to your house and standing over your finger and pressing it on the send button, like, there's copy and paste, can't make it any easier, pitch scripts. There's a private podcast feed of me in your ear giving you all the, coaching to get over the psychological hurdles. But still, no doubt, there'll be a big group of people that read the scripts. Maybe they even come along to the mentoring circle and they do not press send. And, like, I think it's hard to deny that there's an issue when over and over and over again you see yourself stopping yourself. You're sabotaging, and you can, sooner or later that has to become obvious. And, it happens all the time. Like, people pay me good money. They pay me great money in order to argue for their limitations, in order to argue with me about why they couldn't or they shouldn't, charge more, or boot that client that's, treating them poorly, or, all kinds of different things. They pay me excellent money in order to stay exactly where they are. And of course, that's not the point of coaching. But, it's undeniable that, there's a certain person who the cost of changing is too hard. And the emotions that brings up, including sadness, including maybe a little anger, or, a lot of frustration, is too much. And so they would rather stay where they are, than actually make the change. One thing that I see over and over again is people would rather be liked than they would be paid. I've had countless people tell me over the years, I'm happy to charge good money to people that I don't really have a great rapport with. But if I have a really good rapport and I really like the person, then I really struggle to ask them for proper pricing, my actual pricing, which kind of sounds bizarre, because it means you're gonna have clients that you don't really like or respect that much. You're gonna charge people that you like, and that you don't really like, maybe, and instead not charge and create weird vibes with people that, you really have a great deep, empathy or rapport with. So, there's so many stories I could share like that.
I think this charging part is really 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 important because
Mm.
so um there are lots of people out there that just say yes, start your business, etc., and there's loads of different courses you can join, but And I think that a lot of people are very fed up with their jobs. They really dislike them for a number of reasons. But the ultimately, it's either you work for someone else or you work for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that people are often sold the dream that that actually is, you know, work for yourself and then, it'll be brilliant. The reality is I think you can be very good at something. That doesn't mean you can create your own business. And I think there will be this emergence, and it's just my opinion. I have no data to back that up. There will be this emergence of companies where there are partnerships or people have more of a collaboration rather than the solo people,
Yeah.
because I think people will. I think what it takes to create your own business and run your own business, like you say, it's very, um, you putting yourself out there, going through all of your emotions, going through a lot of baggage. There's a lot of stuff in there. And it's easy to say, but when it comes up against it, you've got to deal with it. And it's not just once and done, it's a continual process.
Yeah.
I
New
started
level, new
this.
devil.
Yeah, exactly. I started this business and it's actually something I've self-funded. So when you were saying about like this backup plan, um, it really, yeah, it's sort of, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll just push the problem a bit further down the road, and not have to charge. Now I'm coming up to the point where that money's running out, and um, I start to go, okay, and I don't want to get into the panic stage,
Yeah.
but I want to. It's actually it's actually throwing up quite a lot of interesting emotions and thoughts about charging money. And I actually had this exact scenario the other day. Someone I think would like to work with me, and we've become quite close and supportive. Um, but I also need to build this business out, and I do these lives, but I also need to think about how I can charge for that, and or how that can turn into a business. And so I came across that fear of asking this person for money, and just,
Mm.
and I want,
Good on you.
I, yeah, and do you know what? I was super proud because I've never done it in my whole life, um, and I fumbled it at first, um, because I had to go to another call, so but I could kind of, I did want to run away as quickly as possible, just as the words
Yeah.
were out of my mouth. But
Yeah.
think a lot of it just comes down to reframing and just understanding and then just doing. And it's always going to be uncomfortable the first time you do it. I
Yeah.
feel that our nervous system, our whole background has never really prepared us for that. But you can really take it a small step at a time. And
Yeah.
so I have this thing where the amount of money really isn't the problem. It's the actual asking. I think I think once you so I always say this, I think there's something in my nervous system that says, you know, even if I charged £1 million or £1, the problem is the same problem. It's the money is immaterial. I know you can get into semantics of, okay, well, if you charged £1 million, you'd have
Yeah.
to give like a massive thing. But the
Yeah.
reality was it's the actual act of asking in exchange for something that you're giving. And
Totally. And
once,
look,
yeah, go on.
I think that's kind of fundamental, right? Like the exchange. There is only one rule, and the rule is you exchange cash for value, and everything else you can make up. And I think one of the big issues that a lot of business owners run into, and it kind of sounds a little bit like that's what you're grappling with, is we make it very, very personal. We make it feel like it feels really personal. It feels like we are naked under the spotlight saying, would you buy me? And you are not for sale. You are never for sale. You like, it doesn't matter how interpersonal, maybe you're a therapist, it's still not you that's for sale. So whatever you can do to create some separation between you and your work is going to be a great thing, because anyone that's making it feel like it's personal, and they're making it feel like you're taking the food from from the mouths of their crying babies, is probably an energy vampire, and it's not a conversation that that you're going to succeed at. Like, it's not a good thing. So I think, most people recognize that people in business are in business. And, I made all the mistakes multiple times over for many, many years. And it was the turning points, like the big, brave, bold things that I've done. The turning points were always because I got to a point where I was really pissed off, and I'd had shitty experience after shitty experience after shitty experience. And then I've gone, what the hell? So, like, one story springs to mind. I had about 3 or 4 meetings with the same person, and at the end of the 3rd or 4th meeting, I said to her, "We can't keep meeting like this. I am in business, like, we're gonna have to talk about money, like, I need to be paid," which isn't an elegant thing to say, and she responded and said, "Oh, I felt like we're only just starting to get somewhere." And her response just hit me in the stomach, and I thought, like, firstly, I thought, "Fuck you." And secondly, I thought, "What a fool. Like, what a fool that I've gotten myself into this situation to be having this conversation with this person. Like, it's just as much my fault as anybody's fault." And I think, like, that led to a wave of changes. Some of the things I've done over the years, like where I've just kind of ripped off a Band-Aid, I've gone from 540 to 2,500 in one swoop, one go. I started putting all my prices on my website so that I didn't end up in those conversations with those people. Money up front in full, or deposit taken, or payment plan. If it's not in my bank account, you're not in my head and you're not in my calendar. And, every time I do something that's scary, it's almost always because I've thought, like, "What the hell? How did I end up here?" I've gotten pissed off, I've gotten angry, or I'm got this seething resentment, and no one wants to feel resentment. You don't wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I can't wait to resent people today." Like, it's a horrible feeling, right? Like, you realize that you've got it, and you're like, "I need to do something because no one's gonna come and save me. Like, I'm the person that's gonna have to do this for myself."
Yeah.
I think that I have spent many, many years teaching how to start a business courses and how to start a creative side gig courses. I've done that through community colleges, through TAFEs, various vocational colleges. And within 5 minutes of meeting somebody, I can tell whether they're going to start a business or not. And it has nothing to do with how smart they are, or how educated they are, or how much experience they have, or even how well connected they are. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It's something personality driven, which is they've got this kind of enthusiasm, and it doesn't have to be loud, but they've got this enthusiasm and this confidence that goes along with it, that they're doing this thing. Like, you can see that there's some excitement, and there's self-belief, and there's enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is oh so important. It's the closest thing I know to charisma. Like, enthusiasm is something that you will get paid excellent money for, just for that. Just for that. And the opposite is also true, right? There's some people you meet and you're like, "I wouldn't trust you to babysit my tax return. Like, you are so unenthusiastic, you're almost inert." Those people tend to be people that, like, emotions are contagious. And so we want to be around people that, lift us up, that buoy us up, that make us feel like I'm in the right place. I'm speaking to the right person. Like, this is going to be great. So yeah, it's really important, I think, to know that and recognize that it's not necessarily something you're born with. One of the joys and the privileges of getting older, and we don't all have the privilege of getting older. I've known lots of people that have died young. One of the privileges of getting older is to recognize that you can change your thinking. You can change your brain. You can choose your focus, which means you can then choose your feelings, which means you then choose your thoughts, and you choose your actions. And so, like, I don't wake up in the morning, overawed to be awake. I'm pretty good at lounging about in the bed, but every single day I'm working on my attitude because I know the direct correspondence between my mental health, my attitude, and my profit and loss statement, let alone my actual happiness and self-satisfaction.
Yeah. There's so much in that that I kind of want to dig into. Um, I I think the first thing that comes up is that um, I think I've moved away from excuses,
Oh,
telling myself stories that I can't do it, um, and in that way, I have to change my identity because I've always wrestled with this thing inside that says I have I there's something that feels greater than where I was. That's not in terms of my life, but just something that, and sometimes people go, "Oh, I want to be famous or something. And that's not it. There's something that tells me I haven't yet reached the thing that I really want to. And I don't, and sometimes that's very difficult to actually put into words what that actually is.
yeah,
But I've also realized that, I needed to change who I was because I had this vision of, okay, when when X happens, then I'll feel Y. So
yeah,
as in once I am successful at business, I will feel confident.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
reality is I was trying to change these external things.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I realized the internal things are the things that needed to change.
100%,
And
100%.
and you know, it doesn't matter if I started a business and it was successful or I started a business and it failed. I need to be good with myself. And I think we often look outside to validate inside, but it's looking inside to go outside and not look for validation once you're okay. Once you're okay with yourself,
Yeah,
outside just kind of just mirrors it in many ways. That
yeah.
has taken me a time. And I do put myself in situations where that has been uncomfortable. But you mentioned earlier this desire of, you know, having money as having a plan B. And oftentimes people stay stuck because the pain of moving to the next level
Yeah,
is greater than the pain of staying stuck or where it is. And often we can get here, and again, we can be here and that, and we can say, oh yeah, my life is terrible, really, really, really bad. But that becomes a story and that becomes familiar. And even though we say that we don't like it, we do like it. There's an identity in there. Oh no, I'm no longer the suffering person. I'm
yeah,
the successful person. I
yeah,
don't know what this is. This is very vulnerable. And to make
yeah.
that leap takes time, but I don't know if it's the pain that people have to go through, whether it's that or they just make a decision. I think it's maybe.
I think it's definitely a pain thing. Um, having been a coach for 14 years, I am obsessed with how I motivate other people, and those tools that you can use, of which there's many and varied. And research shows that it's way more motivating to run away from fear than it is to run towards pleasure. Although, of course, pleasure, and good stuff is also motivating. But, it is actually quite useful to get to a rock bottom moment. Like, it is actually quite useful. And sometimes I wonder, like, is this the rock bottom moment? Like, has the person found the rock bottom moment to get to a point when they're actually, going to do something about it? Can I tell you a story about the worst year of my life?
I want to say
So
yes and no. I'm not. Go
best
on.
year followed by worst year. So the year 2000 was the best year of my life, followed by the worst year. I went traveling overseas. I was free. I'd graduated uni. I was young, and having an absolute riot of a time. Nepal, India, Sri Lanka. Let's just say I had a massive misadventure in Sri Lanka, the kind of misadventure that involves the Australian consulate getting involved and telephoning my parents to come and collect me. So the year after that, there was a good 9 months of deep depression. I was at home living with my parents. I had fallen so far because I'd gone from like what a life. I can't believe I get to do this. I'm having the absolute best time ever, to all of a sudden being back home, and I had a job, but it was just, it was like, it was a nothing job. And I'd kind of hide behind the computer screen and cry and tap the keys so that nobody noticed. Um, and I got a little chink when springtime came. There's a little bit of chink of not feeling quite so shit. And I just grabbed it with my claws, and I was like, "Right, I feel slightly better." And I went after it, and I made a really deliberate effort to haul myself out of that depression. And then my cousin said, "There's this job going I saw, I think you might be interested in." It was a tour leading job in Vietnam. So I traveled down to Melbourne, I applied for the job, I got the job. I went early over to Southeast Asia, and it was the best thing I could ever have done, because I could easily have let that significantly shit experience like completely change the trajectory of my life. But I was so stubborn, that the best form of revenge is success and happiness. And so I just saw that little kind of chink of light, and I just went after it. And those 2 years in Cambodia and Vietnam, like, they weren't all roses all the time. It was easily, one of the steepest learning curves of my life, taking groups of tourists, of Australians, Kiwis, English people through, third world countries, war-torn countries. Every other week we're at the Torture Museum, or we're at, the Coochie Tunnels, or we're at the War Museum. But it was the best thing I could have done. And it was there really that planted the seed for entrepreneurship, even though my father was also a small business owner. Vietnam particularly, like, I was so impressed by how entrepreneurial and resourceful and resilient and capable and creative and, energetic the Vietnamese people are. I'm obviously generalizing. But that really planted the seed of, like, this kind of hustle culture. And when I say hustle culture, I think it's been appropriated by the overeducated upper echelons of society that have got massive big safety nets, and are being given investor funds and are making it look hard when it's totally not. It's just like how to blow through other people's money quickly. But that real hustle culture that the Vietnamese have, of like, I need to make money today, because if I don't make money today, I don't eat. Like, you don't have the luxury of going, "Oh, I feel a bit self-conscious asking for the sale, and, I wonder how much I should charge for the cigarettes." You just bloody went ahead and did it. Like, you made the sale and you made it happen because you had no other choice. There was a woman that I befriended in Hue, which is halfway down the country. It's in the middle. And she had one of those glass cabinets on wheels. Have you ever seen those before? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a it's like a cabinet that's got, shelves, and it's glass, and it's on wheels, so you can roll it out into the street, and then you can roll it inside at the end of the day. And inside she'd have, cigarettes, she'd have drinks, she'd have, chips, whatever, snacks. And we'd sit there by the side of the road, and I'd watch her, I'd sit with her as she's selling to different people. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I loved the way that she'd charge different prices for the cigarettes depending on who was in front of her. She'd charge, in one instance, she was charging a Kiwi guy, a New Zealander, way less than she was charging a Vietnamese guy. And I'm like, what was that all about? She said, "Oh, Kiwis are cheap." And she said, "And that Vietnamese guy, he had all the swagger, he had all the gear, and he had his friends there. And so he wants the higher price, because it's like, it's all about appearances, it's all about saving face. So he's actually happy to pay the higher price."
Wow.
But just like watching the way her, listening to her and listening to the way that her brain worked, and, seeing the kind of ideas that she had and the things that she'd implement, that she'd act on, to make some money. Like, it's so very fundamental. And I think the middle classes tend to really overcomplicate it. They bring all this baggage to entrepreneurship, and they bring all these preconceived ideas, and they bring all these hang-ups about money. And, as an Englishman, I'm sure you understand, it's not polite to talk about money. It's not the done thing to talk about how much we're earning. We really can't speak too highly of ourselves. We need to be a bit more modest. We need to wait for other people to speak highly of us. It's not something that we don't want to be a braggart, God forbid. Like all of that socialization, we're talking about thousands of years of socialization needs to be undone if we're actually, to get on LinkedIn, press send on a mass email, to send a pitch to a magazine editor or to send a pitch to a stranger, and to actually make a business. Like it's so, if it feels hard, it's hard for a reason because we're literally talking about thousands of years of socialization, that we've inherited, that people that have less money, they don't have that. They don't have that because it's like, I need money because I need to pay bills and end of story.
Yeah. There's 2 points that I want to sort of speak about that. The first one is about community. Your environment, like you said in Vietnam, sort of
Yes,
shaped you. You saw
counts for a lot.
yeah, you saw other people doing entrepreneurship. And again, entrepreneurship, I'm not really a big fan of the word entrepreneurship because I go on LinkedIn a lot and, there's, everyone says I'm an entrepreneur. And I always say this, just because you sold lemonade outside your house when you were a kid doesn't make you an entrepreneur. And
Yeah,
I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. And I think these labels can oftentimes make us feel more important or make us feel insecure. And so I'm not really a
yeah,
labels person, but I
yeah,
also
yeah,
understand it's useful for people to kind of identify with something. But
yeah.
um, when you go from being an employee to self-employed,
Mm,
I mean, I spend most of my time here on my own, and like you think you can do it on your own, and yes, I think there's a majority that you can, but
yeah,
being around people that are doing something similar, going through not the same struggles in terms of I think it can be a very dangerous area where you go, "Oh, yes, everyone's struggling with the same thing," and you kind of
yeah, you wanna back
you
out of those communities.
yeah, because like you go, "Oh yeah, I'm finding it difficult too. Yeah, me too."
Yeah,
And then it's it's like a diversion. It's rather than face the thing that you're supposed to, you get
yeah,
in this community where yes, it's really difficult for me too, and yes, and so it's reinforcing. But if you're around people that have done it and they go, "Yeah, I've done that," that's really empowering because you go, "Oh, your brain has a reference of okay, this person started." And they've done it, and you go, "Oh, okay, that's great," and you can learn from that. And so, I I think that that aspect of your environment, who you're talking to, and I think sometimes that can be overwhelming. You come across someone that's just like telling you every time, "Oh yeah, amazing." Maybe find someone just a few steps ahead of you. I think is very helpful because if you're
yeah,
feeling very overwhelmed, it can be very off-putting. Certainly, this is my experience at least. That
yeah,
you've got
yeah,
someone up here telling you, "Yeah, yeah, the air up here is amazing," and you go, "Yeah, hang on, I haven't even started climbing yet." So
yeah,
I,
yeah.
but I think it's more about the attitude than anything else. The right
Mm.
type of attitude. You go, "Yeah,
It's
I
definitely the
appreciate."
attitude. It's definitely. I've got a phrase that I use called hard fun.
Okay,
That's what I think it is. It's like we're not gaslighting each other and saying, "Oh, it's easy, I just opened up the cart and I had 10 sales within an hour and I'm sold out." It's not that. But it has to be fun, and it is fun because there is nothing, in my opinion, more satisfying than making a thriving livelihood from your own sweat and smarts. There is nothing more satisfying than that first dollar that you get paid. And, there is nothing that I love better than having a good idea in the shower and then I just kind of whip up a paid live experiment. And that afternoon, I've made my first sale. Like, there is nothing more exciting than that because you're literally taking an idea and making it tangible. And I sell services, so I sell promises, like anyone that sells services sells promises. And I do coaching, which means I get paid to make people feel uncomfortable and to have deep and meaningful conversations and to skip the small talk and to ask, big questions. It's such an intangible thing. And yet, if you can make the intangible tangible, and if you can make it, a thriving livelihood, then I don't know why you wouldn't. And, back to your point about like entrepreneurship, I totally agree. There's a lot of baggage, there's a lot of bullshit, there's a lot of hot air, especially on LinkedIn. Sometimes I think a post is satire and I go to write a snarky remark and then I look at the other comments and realize, oh shit, everybody's serious. But I think it's so fun. And I think that if you can lower the bar and think about your offerings as paid live experiments, because every business experiments, every person, every doesn't matter if they've got millions of dollars, every multinational is experimenting to an extent. They might have teams and they might have systems and support, but it means if they have a failure, it's way more expensive. And a paid live experiment takes something and creates that minimum viable prototype and sells it. That's important because everybody loves the idea of something, and everybody, friends and family, will say, "Oh, I'll be the first to buy it. I'll absolutely be there," and they'll be the last to buy it. Like when the rubber hits the road is when somebody actually pulls out their credit card and pays for the thing, and then it's actually something that is worthwhile, and that you've done a good enough job communicating the value of it, and now you just need the next sale, the next sale, the next sale. And especially in the beginning, that's like really, really important to get that first sale as quickly as possible because it validates the idea. It gives you confidence. It gives you some momentum. And, it means that all you need to do is find the next sale and the next sale and the next sale. If you've sold it once, you can sell it twice, 10 times, 50 times.
The so a number of things come up in my head and sort of questions around this. So we've talked about money, but we haven't really sort of delved into it too much. I think the
What do you want to
association,
ask me, Todd?
yeah, the
Let's talk about it.
you, I would imagine one of the biggest objections is what do I charge?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's a very
and
common question.
it's really strange because in the business that I'm doing, I'm at this stage now that I've been doing these lives. I think they're they're amazing. Well, I know that they're amazing. That a lot of people get a lot of things out of them, and I'm thinking about actually seeing if I can help people be not better on camera, but I think there's a lot of people out there that are had this brilliant idea, but really are struggling just to put themselves out on camera. And I've seen this time and time again with these
Mm.
lives. People, I had this initial conversation. They're really nervous. They come on and they're like, they come alive. They're like, and I'm like, were you kidding me? They literally come alive. But I realized within that, I'm actually a big support for them. I create
Yeah.
an environment where they're happy to talk about themselves and they don't think that they're interesting. I always say the people that don't think they're interesting are the most interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't realize that was a skill that I have because it's easy for me to do. And then you go, well, I need to monetize that in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. And then we get into this weird thing and say, what's that actually worth? And I think this overthinking really comes into that point because you go, right, well, what is that worth to someone? And I'm trying to wrestle with that, but I think it's worth what it is to that person. The prime example of the cigarettes, it's not it's not actually about the product itself. It's what that actually represents for that person.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool.
And so, like, the thing is, I've read all these books on like influence, etc. And, and I don't want to manipulate anyone. I'm not interested in it. But what
Yeah.
I want to do is allow people to get past those excuses, get past themselves to bring whatever they want to the world because it is a very much I would say a visual medium now. I know there's AI. I justify that I'm doing a great job because it's very raw. This is my apartment. It's very honest. There's no studio, etc. And I think that the world does want that right now. They don't want all this fakery. They don't want to be spammed. They want real life. If I show up and I don't look great, even better. That's something that people can really resonate with. But where do you start with that pricing side of things? Do you test it? Do you go, So I had this weird thing in my head, like this all or nothing. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to be really bold, and so I'll go, yep, that's worth 100,000 to someone for some weird reason. And I realized this about myself. I, I set a ridiculous goal that if it pays off would be sort of game changing. But the
Right?
reality is I make it so ridiculous that the chances of that actually working is so low. And so now I can go, well, yeah, it just didn't take off. Almost that me being successful, I'm self-sabotaging in that way about pricing. Has that ever come up in your world?
That's interesting. Um, I don't know about making it too big. I have had people before where I say, okay, what's your income goal? And they say 1 million. And I'm like, great. Have you hit 100K yet? And they're like, not yet. I'm like, okay, well, why don't we make the first goal 100K? I love that 1 million is the goal, but let's make the first goal 100K. And then we need to, work backwards from there and kind of create a monthly target. And when I'm creating a monthly target, I always do it in a 10-month year. So if the goal is 100K, then the monthly goal is 10K. And that gives you a bit of buffer for holidays, sickness, birthdays, unexpected things. But to your question about how do you pick a price or how does this work, most people base it on what's familiar to them. So most people have a quick look around. They go, okay, that's somebody I admire over there. That's the price that they charge. Now, what's my self esteem in relation to my perception of that person? And I'll choose a price that's lower than that. Like I'll choose a price that's there. In other words, it's like, let me just see what direction the wind is blowing. One thing I really loved doing when I used to run those how to start a business courses is I would give people a YouTube video to watch, which was two English matrons, middle aged, looking exactly like an English matron on a rolling green English countryside hill, and they're running around with little nets, and they're catching fresh countryside air, putting it in glass jars, and selling it to the Chinese market, for 100 euros a jar. And I love showing that video to demonstrate that people get paid to name other people's babies. People get paid. I came across somebody the other day who got paid, and I think she was making something like $20,000 per month to help mothers organize their photos on their phones. There are so many people charging all kinds of money for all kinds of strange and unusual things. And the price point, the dollar figure, is not the interesting part. The interesting part is, how do you communicate the value? How do you do a good job? If services are promises, how do you make the intangible tangible? How do you communicate value so that the value seems a hell of a lot higher than the price? And how do you cultivate trust so that people are like, I know this person, I trust this person. They've been turning up on the internet for 18 years now. They've got Google reviews, they've got LinkedIn recommendations, they've got sales pages that preempt every question. They've got testimonials, they've got substance behind them. There's stuff on the internet where I could gorge their content for hours. People want to be able to find you and they want to be able to binge you. If somebody's found you, they're going to look for you they want the podcast, the video, the PDF, like whatever you got, they want, and they want to go hard on it. And then they pay. And we call them the lurkers. And they're always fun because you've never heard of them before. And all of a sudden, you've got a Stripe notification for $9,000. And you're like, who is this person? I don't know who they are. But they know you because they've been lurking sometimes for years. And they know your sense of humor, and they know your opinions, and they know how many kids you got, and they know all the things because they've binged all the things. And they just haven't made themselves known. So, the question of like, how do we charge? Yes, do a profit plan. Yes, do the sums on the back of an envelope, figure out what you need, and then add 10%. But also your price is arbitrary. You get to decide, only you get to decide. Don't plagiarize your competitors' prices, because what's the point in that? All you're doing is, you're making yourself comparable. The whole purpose of branding is to render your competitors irrelevant. And if you kind of look like your competitors, you're offering more or less the same thing and the price is more or less the same, then, people can just kind of price shop and go from person to person to person, and they're not choosing you because you've rendered your competitors irrelevant. You're not a category of one. It's just a race to the bottom, and they're going for like the cheapest, most convenient option. I don't want to be the cheapest, most convenient option. I'm very happy for people to say, you're the most expensive person whose prices I've looked at, and I've had people say that to me before. It's not true, because there's plenty of people more expensive than I am, but, then they go ahead and they purchase anyway. So people don't make decisions based on price. Maybe if it's a grudge purchase, maybe if it's a liter of milk and you don't really care that much about milk, you'll choose the cheapest milk at the most convenient shop. But otherwise, when it comes to stuff that's a little bit aspirational, and what you're doing and what I'm doing is aspirational, it's not like rent and food. They don't make decisions based on price. They make decisions based on value. They want to go like, where is the biggest bang for my buck? Where is the value? And okay, that's the price and that's what I'm paying.
Yeah, that's the thing. I often I think we have this weird relationship with money. Like we go, oh well. I did it the other day. I bought some coffee, and I knew I could buy it in this other shop, um in another country, and it was less money. And then I bought it locally here because I didn't want to do the travel. But it was actually the same brand, but just a different type. We're talking the difference of €1, probably €1.50. But I started going through this weird thing and go, oh, yeah, that's ridiculous. I can get it over there to over here. And I was
Yeah,
like,
we all do that, don't we?
but it's really strange because you go €1.50, the
Yeah,
difference. Yeah, I
yeah,
started this weird argument in my head that that's not worth it. But I would have had to have drove to this other place. It's really
yeah,
inconvenient.
yeah,
They don't sell this exact one of this coffee. And I
yeah,
was like, why did I create all of that for the fact of €1.50 in my head? And it was just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and then I was like, just buy it. And do you know what? I took the coffee. I really love it. You go, yeah. Like, but we have this weird relationship with money and of
yeah,
this costs this much and this, so this can't be that, and we
yeah.
compare the wrong things, right?
We totally compare the wrong things. But it
But
also depends, like, we're all a little funny with money. And a really interesting thing I like to do, or I find it interesting, is talking to friends about money. And this is a challenge for you, Colin, if you're up for it, is ask your friends, not how much they would pay, because people will always lie, how much they have paid for various things. And what you'll probably find is that one friend spends all their money on clothes but doesn't value holidays. One friend spends all their money on holidays but, rents their accommodation. One friend pays all their money in the mortgage but, and then buys the second property, but, they're wearing shoes with holes in them. Everybody has something that they value differently, and, as business owners, it's our responsibility to communicate the value, because we don't know what the value is. I had a guy come into my house. He was a shockingly shit salesman, and he was selling me, or he was trying to, he didn't get the sale, wardrobes, inbuilt wardrobes. And so he gives me the ballpark figure, and he's obviously using that to kind of gauge where I'm at. And he said, "What do you think about that?" And I went, "Oh, I don't know." And he said, "Well, is it inside your budget?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't have a budget." And he's like, "Well, how much did you think it was going to be?" And I'm like, "I got no idea, dude. Like, the last thing on God's green earth I want to be doing with my time is researching the price of wardrobes. Like, I'm not interested. You're the expert. You're in my house to give me a quote. I don't know anything about bloody wardrobes. That's your realm." So I think we all assume that everybody knows more than they do about what we do. We assume that we're communicating enough. We assume it's clear and obvious how we can help. We assume that they understand the value and the outcomes and how they can get the best out of our work. they're not paying attention. They're not listening. We're way less visible than we think we are, and you can always communicate more. Like, you can always do a better job of it. You probably haven't done nearly as enough communication as you think you have.
Yeah. That's that actually kind of leads me. I think that point in itself is amazing. um, I think we overthink about this, and but we do think, oh, if we say this now, that's it. That's set in stone for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But I've come to the realization about experimenting because I think we grow up in school, you know, and we basically told that it's either pass fail. You know, we okay, you're either good at it or you're bad at it. There's no in between. And
Yeah.
so I think in business that's also something people don't take. If I say risks, and it's not risks, that oftentimes for me the risk is not doing it, but most of the time we fear doing something because the outcome will be failure. But for me, when you think about it as an experiment, it's okay, I'm just going to see. And it's really a soft approach of doing something to just say, right, I'm
Yeah.
going to do this for a month. I'm going to
Yes.
try this. Um,
Yes.
and the outcome is knowledge. It's not
Yeah.
pass fail. And then
Yeah.
that makes it so much more interesting because you go, and it's a way to detach yourself from the result. Yeah. And you say, right, okay, I'm going to try this. And at the end, you've set yourself a time limit. You've set
Mm.
yourself a loose-ish goal, what you want to try and find. At the end, you can either say, yeah, I've done that. I feel really good that I've done it, which is the win in itself. What I've learned, do I now stop this? Do I tweak it and make it like this? But the pain associated with pass fail is often the thing that stops us doing something. But
Yeah.
if when I say to myself, I'm just going to experiment, my body
Yeah.
just gets easy and I go, yeah, cool.
Yeah. It's
And
fun,
it's
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And it's paid. And
yeah,
it's
exactly.
live. It's not happening like it's a paid live experiment. Because I think what a lot of people get wrong, it's probably the old passive income pipe dream, is we think, oh, I'll just throw up a PDF and I'll make a digital library of downloadables and I'll never have to speak to a human and, the money will just roll in. It's way easier to sell something that's live. Like, it's way easier. Life's a Pitch is live. It's happening this week. Good Money March happened in March. I'm getting a group of business owners together in Sydney, May 21. It's happening, May 21, you're in or you're out. There's something, whether it's an online thing or a face to face thing, there's something very attractive about something that's live. And you've got that inbuilt deadline because you're either coming on May 21 or you're not. Like, that's a natural deadline. What you said about risk, I think that's really interesting because we tend to overestimate the risk. And in most 99.9% of instances with soloists and small business owners and freelancers, the risk is not money, the risk is ego. It's the ego of, oh my God, I'm promoting something and I'm trying to sell it and nobody's buying it and everybody's judging me. And oh my God, what a stupid idea. I can't believe I ever thought about it. And all those assholes from high school are laughing about me right now, even though they're not. It's that we're risking. And that feels risky, but it's not actually tangible risk. Yeah, it's time and it's effort and maybe it's expectation, but it's not actually a tangible risk. It's not money. It's not you, in any kind of physical danger. It just feels like it because it's ego.
So the I'm just curious about your lives. You're going live 21st of May, you said.
Yeah.
So that's an invite to people.
Yeah.
They don't pay for that
Yeah, no,
that thing.
that's a paid thing. So that's part of my Momentum Mastermind. And speaking of experiments, this is the third attempt at the same idea.
Okay.
Like, Momentum Mastermind looks successful and it is successful and it might be one of my favorite things ever. But this is actually the third attempt I've made at pretty much the same idea. And what I used to do is I used to fly myself to Melbourne. I'd be out of pocket. It was risky, financially risky. And I'd gather people together once a quarter in a room in Sydney and a room in Melbourne. And then from there I turned it into a membership. I ran that for a couple of years. I ended up hating it. I was like, this is not what I want to be doing. And then third time lucky, same name, Momentum. And the name actually came from somebody in Melbourne, who, after the day when we were having drinks and dinner. And she said, I love these days. I always have so much momentum afterwards. And so that's why it's called Momentum. And so we get together once a quarter in Sydney, and then we also do it online as well. We have an online version. So people can come just to that event, that one off day, and pay for that, or it's included as part of the year long mastermind. It took experimenting. It took trial and error. It took, mistakes and, oh God, this is not what I should be doing. And I don't really like the structure of this to finally get it working on the third attempt. God knows how many years later. I think those Sydney and Melbourne, when I used to sell single days, that would have been 2016, maybe, 10 years of trying, the same idea 3 different ways before it finally, took off.
And so the was the idea the end goal? What is it that you want to sell? Because for me, a lot of the time, I think, oh, this is a great thing. It's the same thing as being confident on camera that I I thought, but that's just my opinion. It really, you don't know, and I know we're always told don't
There's
build
never
anything.
any guarantees.
Yeah, but don't build something
Yeah.
that people aren't prepared to pay for. Don't assume this is what people want. So when you do these things, do you have like a loose structure? You have a rigid
Yeah.
thing? You have a goal?
Yeah.
How does that work in your mind?
Yeah, so I flew myself around Australia for years. I went to every capital city and I ran courses and programs in digital marketing and, online selling for soloists and small business owners. And I had a very simple system, which was I always promote and sell first, and I would have an early bird price that expired a month beforehand. So if the date was, let's say, June 1 in Perth, then the early bird would expire, May 1. And I needed a minimum viable number, and I knew what that number was. And that minimum viable number to cover the costs and make profit, not just cover the cost, but make a profit, and then when that date passed, I'd say, yeah, it would be yay or nay. And I wouldn't pay for anything. I wouldn't book my flight. I wouldn't pay for accommodation until that date had passed and I decided it was a goer. And there were multiple courses that didn't go ahead. And I would turn around to the people that have paid and I'd say, look, I'm so sorry I didn't get the minimum viable numbers. Here are your options. And by the end of this, I gave them 3 options. I said, I'll refund you immediately. Um, I hold on to your money and I'm going to reschedule it for the future and you can come. Or the third one was I can hold it as credit and you can buy something different from me, such as, one-to-one coaching. And, that only like the first time I just used to refund people. And when I offered the other options, 95% of people would say, hold on to my money. People will happily go, yeah, of course, you're a small business owner. Of course, it's a financial risk. But the point is that I'm promoting and I'm selling and I'm marketing the thing with 100% conviction that it's going ahead because no one's buying anything from anyone who's like, oh, well, maybe, it might happen. Not really sure. I really do need you to put your money down because, a lot of risk involved. No one gives a flying stuff about your risks. No one cares about your expenses. They just care, like this looks like a great time. This looks like good value. Great. I'm paying. So you've got to have that unshakable, unwavering conviction in the value of the thing that you're selling. And, your day to day confidence will waver because that's normal. You're human. But when you're selling, you can't go into it half cocked. You can't go into it with that wavering energy of like, well, first somebody needs to buy and then I'll feel confident. That's not how it works. You've got to have that conviction that this is the best thing ever and you'd be mad not to buy it. Yeah. And what is actually impressive is the people that act despite no guarantee, despite no sales, because it's easy to be enthusiastic when something's selling. It's easy to, when you're counting your cash and you're like, wow, it's raining cash. It's easy then to go on the internet and go, hey, you should buy this thing. That's the easy part. The hard part is like, I really am not knowing whether this is going to go ahead or not, but god damn it, I'm marketing it on the internet like it's the best thing ever and it's going to be amazing. You have to. You have to be your own hype girl. Who the hell else is going to do it? Like, you have to lead the charge. You're the person that's, you get the joys, you get the fun, and you get the hardness. You get the hard fun, and you can't separate those two things.
Yeah. I am I'm conscious of time, but there's two things I want to just pick up on that. Um, First one is perspective, because often, we go into the business with this rose tinted glasses that everything's going to be great. The
Yeah,
reality for me is that, it's not. There's a lot of ups and downs and in betweens, etc. But something happened to me the other day. I'm looking for ways to maybe monetize what I do, maybe sponsorship or etc. But I realized what a great problem to have. Like, I worked for other people before. Now I get to solve these problems. Like, wow, yeah, I get to maybe ask people if they want to sponsor what I do. What a great fucking thing. I've got to work out how to get over myself to ask those people. Great. What amazing thing. Like, what an amazing amount of
yeah,
freedom that is. I don't
yeah,
feel it as this big weight. And if I do, I try to go, well, just try it. Let's see. Like,
yeah,
let's make it easy. I think life is a lot easier than we make it.
yeah,
We just attach these baggage things. Oh, what if, what if, what if? But we can make it enjoyable, fun. It's just the perspective shift. And we have to, again, come back to that awareness of, what we're doing and how we're thinking about something. If you're
yeah,
aware of it and something's holding you back, okay, just spend a little time working on that. Don't make that the diversion, but just go, okay, I'm going to see what's going on, make a note of it and see how I can improve it. Sometimes there's people that will help you. I mean, I have coaching, etc. The second thing is confidence. And I, I love this because it's one of those things that people go, yeah, I want to wake up tomorrow and be confident. I want to snap my fingers and I'm going to be confident. For me, confidence is not built that way. Confidence comes after the fact that you've done something.
yes,
And
yes,
the challenge is that most people go, yeah, I'm a very introverted person that doesn't like to speak to anyone. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be on stage and everyone's going to love me. No, it doesn't work that way for most people. You need to reset yourself or reset the image that you have in your mind of,
yeah,
okay, I'm very introverted. Then just smile at the bus driver and say thank you, or just, hold the door for someone. Do the little things.
yeah,
And we always skip over those things thinking they're not going to get me on stage, but they will.
yeah,
Excuse me. Because you do that on a daily basis.
mm,
You might have to repeat the same thing, that you smile at the bus driver or something. That becomes the normal. Then you move on to the next thing. And those things compound. We always talk about like interest compounding. But you're teaching your brain of all these reference points. You go, yeah, I did that, I did that. And then what will happen? There'll be an opportunity to maybe at some point just to jump a little bit. Oh, would you just
yeah,
mind giving this quick speech to someone that's leaving? Okay. But your brain has got these reference points. Okay, I can do it. And so you get there a lot quicker. The
yeah,
problem is that we think, okay, it has to be tomorrow. No. If you start today, build those little tiny things, your
yeah,
reference,
yeah,
then you've got all of that experience coming back to you in a safe way if you feel scared. And soon before you know it, yeah, you will be on stage. And
yeah,
it will go a lot quicker than you think. We just want it to happen tomorrow, but it won't happen tomorrow. You need to prove to yourself that everything's okay. And then it builds and then gets really quick and then something happens. That's my experience. Shoot me down if you think anything different to
No, I think
that.
that's great. I mean, I think that's totally in line with what I believe. I think, confidence is an action, it's a verb, it's a muscle that you build over time, and you can bank it. As you said, it compounds. And, it's that kind of mental practice of reminding yourself rather than letting your anxiety take control. of going, I did that and I did that. And the bus driver smiled back at me and, it was great. And it's that compounding effect of over time, you are actually rewiring your brain into, more of an upbeat, more of a confident, more of a resourceful, way. And that's, we touched on entrepreneurship, like entrepreneurial thinking is optimistic, it's creative, it's resourceful, it's resilient. It's like, this is what I got. This is what I got to work with. Like, how can I make the best out of it? How can I make it awesome? I think that these skills that entrepreneurship business teaches, these are life skills. These are skills that make you better at humaning. They're not, technical skills. We oftentimes think it's all about our technical skill. It's not. It's the psychological skills, what we call soft skills, which are so valuable and so pertinent to every aspect of your life, to make you better and better and better.
Yeah. And I I think about this in terms of, the idea of being confident on camera, this thing that
Mm.
I'm wrestling with in my head. The reality is, it's not about being on camera, it's how you sharpen your life, and that fact of transferable skills. We often think that's business, that's home,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
um, we solve problems all the time, especially if you've got kids. You kind of have to solve it on the fly in the worst possible moment. Like, I'm going to school and my kids are having a bit of a fit that they haven't got the clothes that they want. Okay, I need to solve this, and I need to solve it in a very short period of time because we've got to be there for the school bell.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so we associate these two different things. You go, hang on a second, if I can do that all before 8 o'clock in the morning,
Totally.
yeah, hell yeah, I can do it. And we don't associate those things. And yeah, and when you start thinking of yourself as a whole and go, yeah, I'll do that. Why can I do that? We
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have these weird images of ourselves, but
yeah,
like confidence is found in everything, and it's not about confidence on camera. It's confidence in your
totally.
relationship, confidence in uh, who you see yourself as. It's such a
Yeah.
deep rooted thing. Um, but yeah, I think all of these things, like you said, are so transferable. And we try to sell one thing, but it actually has a much bigger impact. And I think
Mm.
that's what we overlook so often.
Yeah, totally.
Fantastic. Well, I think I could talk to you forever. All that knowledge, experience. I just I'm really into it. But I've learned a lot, and I can see some blind spots in my own thinking, which is really, really helpful for me because that helps me see, okay, maybe I need to do some work on that part of
That's
me. So,
good.
but this conversation was amazing. It just, yeah, it's really refreshing. Yeah, I can see that you're a highly motivating person, but you're also very human, which I like. Oftentimes people come and they say, right, okay, it's got to be robotic, follow A, B, C. But
Yeah,
I can see that you see the human inside that and you don't stand for those excuses. Okay, they are an excuse, but let's get past it. And I love that. And I thank you very much for this conversation. It was really great. Um, in terms of where people should find you, obviously you're running these masterclasses, etc.
yeah.
Is it a website they should find you? LinkedIn, where I found you? Where's
Yeah,
the best place?
all the places. I'm on all the channels. I even set myself up on Telegram. No, Signal, sorry. I'm on Signal, I'm on Telegram, I'm on WhatsApp. But my home is hustleandheart.com.au. That's where all the good stuff is. That's where the paid live experiments are. I've got lots and lots of free resources. There's something called the Scalable, Stackable Recurring Revenue, which is a private podcast. It's totally free. It's a audio only free program. We get into the nitty gritty of pricing and communicating value and recurring revenue. I've always got stuff, always got online events and content events and face to face events happening. So yeah, come and find me.
Fantastic. Well, I link all of these links in the repost. So, but
Right.
for today, Brooke, real pleasure. Thank you for sharing all of this. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Colin. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Bye.